I thought my son abandoning me on my birthday was rock bottom. I was wrong. When I cut him out of my will, he fought back by trying to have me committed, calling me mentally unfit in a court of law. He wanted to steal my home, my money, and my mind. He was about to find out what happens when you corner a woman with nothing left to lose. Before I begin my story, let me know in the comments where you are listening from and what time it is. I just want to know, I'm not alone in this. And if you feel moved by what you hear, consider subscribing. It helps more people become aware of the reality of elder abuse. Now let me tell you what really happened. The quiet that settled over my life in the months following my 75th birthday was a fragile, wounded thing. It was a peace born not of contentment but of absence. The phone no longer rang with my son Andre's perfunctory, guilt-ridden calls. My daughter-in-law, Brianna, no longer graced my doorstep with her sharp, judgmental presence. I had cut them off, not with a dramatic declaration, but with a wall of silent dignity they could not breach. My new will, which left my entire estate to the community foundation, was a secret I held close to my heart, a final, quiet testament to their betrayal. I had thought their humiliation, the social media storm that erupted after their Cancun vacation funded by my credit card, the quiet shunning they received from our extended family, would be lesson enough. I thought they would retreat, lick their wounds, and perhaps in time, find some measure of remorse for the profound cruelty of leaving me alone on my milestone birthday while they lived a life of luxury on my dime. How foolish I was. I had underestimated the depths of their entitlement, the sheer, unyielding force of their greed. I heard whispers through my old friend Janice. Andre and Brianna were not remorseful. They were furious. They were not ashamed, they were indignant. In their twisted narrative, I was the villain. I was the cruel, vindictive old woman who had overreacted to a simple misunderstanding. I had embarrassed them, had cost them their vacation's perfect ending. And most unforgivably, I had cut them off from the financial support they had come to see not as a gift, but as their due. Their lifestyle, I learned, had taken a significant hit. Without my emergency funds to prop them up, their carefully constructed facade of affluence was crumbling. Brianna's designer shopping sprees ceased. Andre was forced to sell the flashy sports car he'd been so proud of. They were being forced to live within their own means, a reality they found utterly intolerable. Their fury, I knew, would need an outlet. And I knew with a chilling certainty that it would be directed at me. I just didn't realize how sinister their new plan would be. I lived quietly, finding solace in my routines. My friendship with Nora Blake, the retired Judge Tyrell had introduced me to, had become a weekly comfort. We'd have tea, discuss books, and she'd offer quiet, practical advice, her sharp legal mind a reassuring presence. I was healing slowly. The hollow ache of their abandonment was still there, but it was becoming a scar rather than a fresh wound. Then one Tuesday morning my doorbell rang. It was them. Andre and Brianna. My heart seized in my chest. I hadn't seen them in nearly 6 months. Andre was holding a bouquet of cheap grocery store carnations, a peace offering that was an insult in its own right. Brianna was smiling, a wide, brittle smile that didn't reach her cold eyes. "Mama," Andre began, his voice oozing a false sincerity that made my skin crawl. "We've come to apologize. We were wrong. So wrong. We miss you terribly." I stood in the doorway, my hand on the knob, not moving to let them in. "Is that so?" said my voice cool. "Yes," Brianna chimed in, her voice sickeningly sweet. "We've been doing a lot of thinking. A lot of talking. We even brought someone with us who we think can help us heal as a family." From behind them, a man I hadn't noticed before stepped forward. He was in his 50s with a tidy gray beard, spectacles, and a kind, professional smile. "Mrs. Wynne," he said, extending a hand. "My name is Dr. Evans. I'm a family therapist. Andre and Brianna have told me so much about their love for you, and their deep regret over your recent estrangement. They asked me to accompany them today, to help mediate a path towards reconciliation." A therapist. My children, who had never once considered my feelings, had suddenly become so concerned with our family healing, that they had brought a doctor to my doorstep? The alarm bells in my head, the ones honed by years of their subtle manipulations, began to ring with a deafening clamor. This was not an apology. This was an ambush. A family therapist. The words hung in the air, a Trojan horse presented at my doorstep. My years of experience both as a mother to a manipulative son and as a woman who had seen her fair share of life, told me that this was a performance. A carefully staged, sinister play, and I was the unsuspecting lead. But I also knew that to refuse them entry, to slam the door in the face of their supposed therapist, would only serve their narrative. It would be proof of my difficulty, my unreasonableness. So with a chilling sense of walking into a trap, I stepped aside. "Of course," I said, my voice a model of polite grandmotherly surprise. "Please come in." They entered my living room, the room they had once so casually dismissed, and arranged themselves on my sofa. Dr. Evans, their hired gun, sat in the armchair opposite me, a leather-bound notepad on his knee, his smile kind and utterly disingenuous. Andre and Brianna sat beside him, their faces a perfect picture of concerned, loving children. "Thank you for seeing us, Mrs. Wynne," Dr. Evans began, his voice a smooth, calming baritone. "Andre and Brianna have expressed to me their profound regret over the recent distance in your family. They love you very much and they are deeply worried about you. About your well-being and your state of mind after the unfortunate incident on your birthday." My state of mind. There was the first subtle probe. "My state of mind is quite clear, doctor," I replied coolly. "I was abandoned by my children on my 75th birthday while they took a vacation using my money. My feelings about that are, I believe, perfectly rational." He smiled, a dismissive, patronizing gesture. Of course. And your feelings are completely valid. But your children have told me that you've been somewhat isolated since then. That you've made some rather drastic and impulsive decisions regarding your will. They worry that your grief, combined with the natural effects of aging, might be clouding your judgment. I could see Brianna nodding along with a sad, empathetic expression, as if confirming every word. The audacity of it was breathtaking. They were trying to use my own justified reaction to their cruelty as proof of my instability. The therapy session continued in this vein for nearly an hour. Dr. Evans asked me a series of strange circular questions, designed, I realized, to confuse and fluster me. He'd ask about a specific date from my childhood, then immediately jump to a question about my current finances. He'd ask me to recount the details of my birthday, then interrupt me to ask what I'd had for breakfast 3 days ago. "You see, Mrs. Wynne," he'd say gently when I hesitated, "it's these small memory lapses that have your children so concerned." All the while I could see Brianna out of the corner of my eye. Her phone was resting on her lap, its small red recording light glowing discreetly. She was filming me. Filming my evaluation. Gathering evidence for the case she was building against my sanity. The fury that had been simmering within me since their arrival was now a white-hot inferno. They weren't just trying to manipulate me, they were trying to create a fraudulent record of my mental decline. They wanted to strip me of my autonomy, my assets, my very identity, all under the guise of loving concern. I knew I had to be careful. Any outburst, any show of anger, would be twisted and used against me as proof of my emotional instability. So I played my part. I answered his questions with a quiet, sometimes hesitant dignity. I allowed myself to appear slightly confused by his rapid-fire, nonsensical questioning. I let them see what they wanted to see. A frail old woman easily bewildered, a perfect candidate for a conservatorship. Finally, after an hour of this psychological torment, I decided I had had enough. I leaned forward, my gaze meeting Dr. Evans's directly. "Doctor," I said, my voice suddenly clear and strong, devoid of any feigned confusion, "your line of questioning is quite unorthodox for a family therapist. It feels less like a session aimed at reconciliation, and more like a preliminary competency hearing. Are you, by any chance, a forensic psychologist?" The change in my demeanor, the sharpness of my question, clearly startled him. He stammered, his professional composure faltering for the first time. I am a licensed therapist with a broad range of specialties, Mrs. Wynne." "I see," I said, a cold smile touching my lips. "Well, I believe this session is over. I find your methods to be unhelpful." I stood up, a clear dismissal. "Andre, Brianna," I said, turning to my children who were staring at me, their faces a mixture of shock and dawning alarm. "Thank you for your concern. Please show the good doctor out." They scrambled to their feet, their plan clearly not having gone as they'd expected. As they herded their hired gun out the door, Brianna shot me a look of pure venom over her shoulder. The mask had slipped. I stood by my window watching them retreat, a strange sense of calm settling over me. The ambush had failed for now. I had seen their strategy, their weapon of choice. They thought they were so clever, so sophisticated in their cruelty. They had no idea that they had just declared war on a woman who had spent a lifetime out-strategizing people far more formidable than them. They thought my mind was my weakness. I was about to prove that it was my most powerful weapon. And it was now aimed directly at them. The moment the front door clicked shut behind my son and his smirking wife, the fragile composure I had maintained during their psychological ambush shattered. A wave of pure, unadulterated fury, so potent it left me trembling, washed over me. They had come into my home not with apologies, but with a hired gun, a charlatan in a therapist's suit, to build a case against my sanity. They had sat on my sofa in the house my husband and I had filled with love and laughter, and had actively tried to prove that I was mentally incompetent, all so they could get their greedy hands on my money. The sheer monstrous audacity of it was a fresh and profound violation. My first instinct was to call my lawyer immediately, to unleash the full force of the law upon them. But my hands were shaking too badly to dial. I sank into my armchair, my heart hammering against my ribs, my breath coming in short, ragged gasps. The anger was so immense it felt like it might consume me. They thought I was weak. They thought I was a fool. They thought they could simply erase me. But as I sat there, forcing myself to take slow, deep breaths, the initial chaotic rage began to cool, to crystallize into something harder, something more useful. A cold, clear, strategic resolve. An emotional outburst was what they wanted. It would only feed their narrative of the hysterical old woman. No. My response had to be as cold, as calculated as their own vile scheme. I thought of Nora Blake, my friend, the retired judge. The woman whose wisdom and strength had been a quiet beacon in the lonely years since Harold passed. She was more than just a friend. She was my ally, my confidant, a woman who understood the intricacies of the law and the even greater intricacies of human cruelty. Her number was on my speed dial, a small comfort I had not yet had to use in any real crisis. Till now. My hand was steady as I picked up the phone. She answered on the second ring, her voice calm and reassuring. "Dee, is that you, dear? I was just thinking about you." "Nora," I began, my voice tight with a suppressed fury, "they did it. They actually did it." And in a torrent of words, I recounted the entire sordid affair. The ambush, the fake therapist, the manipulative questions, Brianna's phone secretly recording my evaluation. I told her about their clear, undeniable intent to have me declared incompetent so they could seize my assets. There was a long, cold silence on the other end of the line. When Nora finally spoke, her voice was devoid of its usual warmth, replaced by the chilling, precise authority of the judge she once was. "Dee," she said, her voice like ice, "this is no longer just a family dispute. This is conspiracy to commit fraud. This is harassment. This is a malicious, bad faith attempt to abuse the legal system. And we are going to shut it down. Hard." Her words, so full of righteous anger on my behalf, were a balm to my wounded spirit. I was not alone in this fight. "What do we do, Nora?" I asked, my own voice now steady, ready for battle. "First," she said, "we do nothing that they expect. Do not call them. Do not confront them. Let them believe their little video and their quack doctor's report have given them the upper hand. Let them file their petition. In fact," she added, a note of grim satisfaction in her voice, "we want them to file it. We want them to put their lies, their fraudulent claims on an official court record." She then outlined our counter-strategy, a plan of such beautiful, elegant simplicity it made me want to weep with relief. "You, my dear," she instructed, "are going to get a full, comprehensive, independent neuropsychological evaluation. From the best. I know just the doctor to call. Dr. Alastair Finch, the head of geropsychology at the University Hospital. He is unimpeachable. His evaluation will be our foundation." She continued, "Second, I am going to make a few quiet phone calls of my own. That Evans they brought to your house? I will find out exactly who he is, what his credentials are, and how many other evaluations, like yours, he has performed for desperate, greedy families. I suspect he is not as professional as he appears. And third," she concluded, her voice now holding a hint of the courtroom gladiator she had once been, "we will prepare our response. We will not just defend against their petition. We will countersue. For emotional distress, for legal fees, for malicious prosecution. We are not just going to win, D. We are going to make them regret the day they ever thought they could outsmart you. As I hung up the phone, a profound sense of power washed over me. Nora's clarity, her strategic brilliance, her unwavering belief in me had cut through the fog of my fear and anger. I was no longer a victim waiting for the next blow to fall. I was a plaintiff preparing her case. The next morning, I called Dr. Finch's office and scheduled my evaluation. The day after that, Nora called me back. I have some interesting news about your Dr. Evans, she said, a dry amusement in her voice. It seems he has a rather checkered professional history. A few censures from the State Board for unethical practices. And a very interesting side business giving expert testimony in precisely these kinds of conservatorship cases. He is, in short, a hired gun. And his credibility is about to be shredded. I smiled, a real, genuine smile for the first time in what felt like an eternity. The pieces were falling into place. My children, in their arrogance, had built their case on a foundation of lies, with a compromised expert as their star witness. They thought they were building a cage for me. They had no idea they were walking into one of their own. I had my ally. I had my plan. And I had the truth. And the truth, I knew, was a weapon they were utterly unprepared for. As Nora had predicted, the official legal petition for conservatorship arrived about a month after their ambushed doctor's visit. It was delivered by a stern-faced courier, a thick, intimidating envelope that felt heavy with the weight of my children's lies. I accepted it with a steady hand, my heart a cold, hard knot in my chest. This was it. Their declaration of war, formalized in the sterile, unforgiving language of the law. I sat in my favorite armchair, the one my husband Harold had always loved, and read the document, my old reading glasses perched on my nose. It was a masterpiece of malicious fiction, a carefully constructed narrative designed to paint me as a senile, paranoid, and vindictive old woman who was a danger to herself and her own finances. The petition, filed by your loving and deeply concerned children, Andre and Brianna Wynne, began with a long, flowery preamble about their profound love for me and their heartbreaking duty to intervene for my own protection. Then came the lies, one after another, each one a sharp, deliberate twist of the knife. They cited my erratic decision to rewrite my will as primary evidence of my declining mental state. They described my grief over Harold's passing not as a natural process, but as a descent into delusional paranoia. They twisted my quiet independence into dangerous isolation, my preference for my own home into a refusal to accept necessary care. And then came the report from their hired gun, Dr. Evans. It was attached as an exhibit, a 10-page document of pseudoscientific jargon and psychological assassination. He described me, a woman he had met for less than an hour, as exhibiting clear signs of cognitive decline, persecutory ideation, and an inability to manage complex financial decisions. He cited my agitation during his manipulative questioning as proof of my emotional instability. He concluded with a grave recommendation that a temporary and eventually permanent conservatorship be granted to my devoted children to protect me from my own failing mind. And the video. Brianna's secret recording of their ambush. They had submitted it as evidence, believing it showed a confused, rambling old woman. They had no idea it was, in fact, the very evidence Nora and I would use to prove their coercion and my own quiet, clever resistance. As I read, my initial fury gave way to a strange, almost detached clarity. They had put their cruelty on paper. They had signed their names to these lies. They had entered a legal arena where sentiment and manipulation held no sway, where only facts and evidence mattered. And they had just handed me everything I needed to destroy them. I immediately called Nora. I read her excerpts from the petition, from Dr. Evans's fraudulent report. I heard her let out a low, angry hiss on the other end of the line. "They are fools, Dee," she said, her voice tight with a controlled rage. "Arrogant, greedy, and incredibly foolish. They have just officially perjured themselves in a court filing. This is better than I could have hoped for. Our own preparations had been meticulous. My independent evaluation with Dr. Alistair Finch, the unimpeachable head of geropsychology at the University Hospital, had been extensive and thorough. 3 sessions of rigorous cognitive testing, memory assessments, and in-depth interviews. His final report, which now sat in a sealed envelope in Nora's safe, was a testament to my sound mind. Mrs. Wynne, he had told me with a kind smile at our last session, your memory and reasoning skills are sharper than most people half your age. You are, without a doubt, fully competent to manage your own affairs. Nora's legal team had also been at work. They had compiled a complete financial history, showing my decades of prudent management of my own assets. They had affidavits from my friends, from my pastor, even from Tyrell next door, all testifying to my lucidity, my independence, my kindness. And most importantly, they had the original viral video of Andre and Brianna's callous abandonment of me on my birthday, a video that painted a very different picture of who the caring parties truly were in this family drama. Our response to their petition was a legal masterpiece, drafted by Nora herself. It didn't just deny their claims, it systematically dismantled them. It exposed their family therapist as a discredited hired gun. It presented the stark contrast between their claims of my financial incompetence and my lifetime of fiscal prudence. It highlighted the timeline of their concern, which had so conveniently begun only after I had cut them off financially. And then came our countersuit. We sued them for malicious prosecution, for intentional infliction of emotional distress, for harassment. And we petitioned the court to have them pay for every single cent of my substantial legal fees. Fees incurred solely because of their greedy, bad-faith attack on my character and my autonomy. The battle lines were drawn. They had filed their petition, their story of a senile, helpless mother. I had filed my response, my story of a resilient, intelligent woman fighting back against the predatory greed of her own children. It would all come down to a courtroom, to a judge, to the undeniable weight of the truth. They had started this war, but I, with the help of a brilliant, loyal friend and my own unshakable resolve, was going to finish it. The day of the conservatorship hearing, my heart was a steady, resolute drum against my ribs. The fear and humiliation I had felt during their ambush doctor's visit was gone, replaced by a cold, righteous anger. I walked into that courtroom on my own 2 feet, leaning only slightly on my cane, my best navy suit crisp and professional, my head held high. Nora Blake, my friend and a retired judge herself, walked beside me, her presence a silent, formidable shield. Across the aisle sat Andre and Brianna, looking smug and confident, their slick lawyer between them. They were flanked by their hired gun, Dr. Evans, who clutched a leather briefcase, no doubt filled with his fraudulent report on my supposed cognitive decline. They looked at me with a mixture of pity and contempt, so certain of their impending victory. They saw a frail old woman they had successfully cornered. They had no idea they were looking at their own executioner. The judge, a sharp-eyed woman named Maria Hernandez, had a reputation for being tough, fair, and having very little patience for nonsense. Andre and Brianna's lawyer presented their case first. It was a masterpiece of half-truths and manipulative framing. He painted a picture of a once brilliant woman now sadly in the throes of a tragic decline. He spoke of my isolation, my paranoia, my erratic financial decisions, meaning of course my decision to disinherit them. He presented Brianna's secretly filmed video of their ambush as Exhibit A, a supposed testament to my confusion. Then Dr. Evans took the stand. He droned on in a soothing, professional voice, detailing his findings from his 1-hour evaluation. He spoke of my persecutory ideation, my memory lapses, my emotional instability. He concluded with a grave recommendation that a full conservatorship was not just advisable, but medically necessary for my own protection. It was a compelling performance, I had to admit. Anyone listening might have been convinced. Then it was Nora's turn. She didn't begin by calling me to the stand. She began by cross-examining Dr. Evans. Her questioning was a work of art, a slow, methodical dismantling of a charlatan. She started gently, asking about his credentials, his methodology. Then she moved in for the kill. Dr. Evans, she said, her voice like silk, is it standard practice to conduct a full mental competency evaluation in a client's living room, without their prior consent, in under 1 hour? He stammered, well, in certain family-mediated situations. And is it standard practice, Nora continued, cutting him off, to have the very parties who stand to benefit financially from a finding of incompetence present during that evaluation, secretly filming it? His face began to pale. Nora then produced a document. Your Honor, this is a record from the State Medical Board, detailing 3 separate censures against Dr. Evans for unethical conduct, including providing biased testimony in conservatorship cases. The judge's eyes narrowed. Dr. Evans began to sweat. His credibility was in tatters before he had even left the stand. Next, Nora called Andre to the stand. "My own son." He walked up, his confidence slightly shaken but still present. Nora was kind, almost gentle with him at first. She asked him about his love for me, his concern for my well-being. He spouted the rehearsed lines about his heartbreaking duty. Then Nora's tone shifted. "Mr. Wynne," she said, "you state in your petition that your mother's decision to disinherit you is the primary evidence of her erratic and vindictive mental state. Is that correct?" "Yes," Andre said firmly. "She was always going to leave us everything. This sudden change, it's proof she's not herself." "I see," Nora said. "So, your concern for her mental state began after you realized you were no longer going to inherit her assets?" Andre flushed. "No, of course not. We were worried for months." "Were you?" Nora asked, her voice dangerously soft. She turned to the large screen in the courtroom. "Your Honor, I would like to present Exhibit B. A video that went viral on social media some months ago, on the occasion of my client's 75th birthday." And there was the video. The one I hadn't seen since that awful day. The grainy cell phone footage of me standing alone at my birthday table, the look of profound heartbreak on my face after being abandoned by my children who were, at that very moment, vacationing in Cancun on my dime. Nora let the video play in its entirety, the silence in the courtroom thick with a stunned, horrified pity. Andre stared at the screen, his face ashen. When it was over, Nora turned back to him. "Mr. Wynne," she asked, her voice ringing with a cold, clear authority, "is this the erratic behavior from your mother that caused you such profound concern? Or was it your cruelty, your profound abandonment of her on her milestone birthday, that caused a sane, rational, and deeply wounded mother to decide that you were no longer worthy of her legacy?" He just sat there, speechless, his lies exposed, his hypocrisy laid bare for the entire court to see. He had no answer. Nora wasn't finished. She presented my meticulous financial records, showing decades of my own prudent management. She presented the glowing report from the unimpeachable Dr. Finch, confirming my full mental competency. She built a wall of truth around me, a fortress so strong that my children's pathetic, greedy lies simply crumbled against it. Finally, she rested her case. The judge looked from me to Nora and then to my son and daughter-in-law, who now looked small, petty, and utterly defeated. The verdict was coming, and I knew with an unshakable certainty that it would be a just one. The judge, a woman whose stern expression had deepened with every piece of evidence Nora presented, took off her reading glasses and polished them slowly, her gaze fixed on my son Andre and his wife Brianna. The silence in the courtroom was absolute, charged with a tension so thick it felt like a physical weight. My children, who had walked in that morning with such smug, predatory confidence, now sat huddled together, their faces pale with the dawning, horrifying realization of their catastrophic miscalculation. "Mr. Wynne, Mrs. Wynne," Judge Hernandez began, her voice low and laced with a contempt that was far more terrifying than any shout. "In my 15 years on this bench, I have seen a great many frivolous and vexatious lawsuits. I have seen families torn apart by greed, by resentment, by a host of human failings. But rarely," she paused, her gaze sweeping over them like a scythe, "have I seen a petition for conservatorship so clearly motivated by pure, unadulterated avarice and initiated with such profound, calculated cruelty." Andre flinched as if he had been struck. Brianna stared at her hands, unable to look up. "You have come into my courtroom," the judge continued, her voice rising slightly, "and you have presented this court with a fabricated narrative of your mother's decline. You hired a psychologist of questionable repute to assassinate her character. You used her profound grief and your own shocking neglect as evidence of her instability. You have twisted a mother's love and a lifetime of her sacrifice into a weapon to be used against her, all in a transparent, disgusting attempt to seize control of her assets after she, quite justifiably, wrote you out of her will." She then turned her gaze to the video that had been presented, the viral video of my lonely 75th birthday. "This court has seen Exhibit B," she said, her voice now like cracking ice. "And what this court saw was not an erratic woman, but a heartbroken mother, abandoned by her children on a milestone birthday while they vacationed on her money. The only instability this court has witnessed today is the profound instability of your own moral character. The shame was a palpable thing, a red tide creeping up Andre's neck, a tremor in Brianna's clasped hands. The petition for conservatorship, Judge Hernandez declared, her voice ringing with finality, is hereby denied with extreme prejudice, meaning you may never file such a claim against your mother again. She banged her gavel once, a sharp, definitive crack. Furthermore, she continued, her eyes narrowing, this court finds that this lawsuit was filed in bad faith, with malicious intent to cause emotional distress and to fraudulently gain control of Mrs. Wynn's estate. Therefore, pursuant to state statutes on frivolous litigation, I am ordering you, Mr. and Mrs. Wynn, to pay for all of Mrs. Dolores Wynn's substantial legal fees incurred in defending against this outrageous petition. A gasp went through the courtroom. I saw Brianna's head snap up, her face a mask of pure horror. My legal fees with Nora's top-tier firm were astronomical. It was a sum that would likely cripple them financially for years, if not bankrupt them entirely. The judge wasn't finished. And finally, she said, looking directly at me for the first time with a glimmer of what looked like fierce, protective sympathy, this court is issuing a permanent restraining order, effective immediately, prohibiting both Andre and Brianna Wynn from contacting, harassing, or coming within 500 yards of Mrs. Dolores Wynn or her residence. Your mother has earned her peace. This court will ensure she has it. She banged her gavel again. We are adjourned. It was over. Andre and Brianna sat there, stunned, defeated, their vicious scheme not only foiled but turned back on them with devastating financial and legal consequences. Their attempt to humiliate me had ended in their own public legal disgrace. I walked out of that courtroom leaning on the arm of my dear friend Nora, my head held high. The weight of the past year, the fear, the self-doubt, the profound humiliation finally began to lift, replaced by a sense of quiet, steely vindication. The aftermath was exactly as Nora had predicted. Andre and Brianna were forced to sell their oversized house to pay my legal fees. Their social circle, aghast at the public details of their cruelty, shunned them. Their perfect life imploded, a direct consequence of their own monstrous greed. I found my peace. My house was quiet again, but it was a peaceful quiet, not a lonely one. I reconnected with my old friends. I started a small book club. I found joy in the simple, everyday rhythms of a life free from my children's toxic influence. The foundation I had established with my new will began its good work, a testament to my values, a legacy that would long outlive the memory of their betrayal. I had been called dramatic, senile, a fool. But I had proven them all wrong. I had faced down their cruelty not with rage but with resilience, with intelligence, and with the unwavering conviction of a mother who, when pushed to the absolute limit, had finally, blessedly chosen to save herself. And that was a victory more precious than any inheritance.